Today is our last one of these sessions for 2018, but we will be returning in January. So if you want to be updated on what topics we're going to have, or if you would like to join us, just give Ellen your email at the end of the session. We will be back here starting in January and doing these monthly once again. Before we get to our panelists, I just want to be sure to thank our sponsors who really helped us out this year. They're real leaders in this community, helping us sort of bring some of these issues out of more uncomfortable boardrooms and settings like that and into a casual atmosphere. GN Ferraris, public accountants, the Adam Miller Group, the Sag Harbor Chamber of Commerce, the Sag Harbor Variety Store, Attorney John Leonard, the Washwick Agency, Dayton Ritz and Osborne, BNB Bank, Attorney Tiffany Scarlato, Harbor Books, Fisher Home Furnishings, and Burke & Sullivan Attorneys at Law. Thank you all very much. I also just want to thank LTV, which has filmed every one of these sessions and helped us with the microphones and everything here. It's always important for us to get the word out to as many people as possible, so we thank the folks at LTV. As many in this room are aware, Sag Harbor has always been a home to artists. James Fenimore Cooper to E.L. Doctorow, Lanford Wilson, Spalding Gray, Alan Alden, Eleni Stritch, to our Elaine Streets, to our own panelists, April Gornik and Eric Fischl. The creatively inclined have always flocked to this region for decades. The founding of the Bay Street Theater in 1991 by Sybil Christopher, Emma Walton, and Steve Hamilton was a critical moment in the development of Sag Harbor Village as a center for arts and culture, with a main street already blessed with art galleries and spaces like Canio's books. With the reconstruction and expansion of the John Jermain Memorial Library, a new vision for the Sag Harbor Whaling and Historical Museum, a new mission for the reimagined Sag Harbor Cinema Art Center, the creation of the Sag Harbor American Music Festival, and the recent news that April and Eric plan to open an incubator of artistic expression at the church on Madison Street, now more than ever, Sag Harbor feels like it could be the epicenter of creation on the South Fork. Eric Cohen, the coordinator of technology and media with the John Jermain Memorial Library, conceived the idea of a cultural district, a concept that seems closer to reality now more than ever. So we're gonna start the conversation with a question for Eric, just as he served his lunch.
I'll answer as soon as I finish eating.
We specialize on timing at the Sag Harbor Express. Eric, you and I'm sure others at the library have been instrumental in organizing the Sag Harbor Cultural Heritage Weekend, which is part of the larger idea of establishing a cultural district in Sag Harbor. Can you tell us where the idea of creating a cultural district came from and what you hope it would accomplish? And you can just grab the microphone there, please.
Sure.
It's on? Good. So it actually grew out of a really interesting, unexpected place, which was the idea of placemaking. Back in 2010, Save Sag Harbor and the library sent me to a workshop in New York City run by people for Project for Public Spaces, which was all about how to improve upon the public spaces in your community. And it was a great workshop, and the library has always been focused on itself as a cultural institution. A lot of people going back years think of libraries as sort of book warehouses, but that's not at all what we do now. These days we're all about programming, we're about art exhibits, we're about music, we're about writers groups and read book clubs, and we approach culture from a variety of different directions. So we always are thinking about how to make the library more accessible to the community. And after this workshop that I went to, we started thinking about the area around the library. And if you think about it, there's the library, across the street is the Whaling Museum, diagonally across the street is the Custom House. A few doors down from that is the Sag Harbor Historical Society. You go the other way, you have Canio's Books and Cultural Cafe. Around the corner now we have the church. Of course everybody knows what's on Main Street and Bay Street Theater, and we just looked at that area and we said, wow, we have a cultural district, but it's not acknowledged as a cultural district. And we also started thinking about how people use this village. So a lot of people come here from the outside and they visit the beautiful Main Street and they do a lot of shopping and dining, and maybe they never take the extra few steps. It's really only a block down to the Custom House, the Whaling Museum, the library, and we thought, what can we do to encourage more of a cross flow between what's going on in the commercial center of town and what's going on down a little further south on the cultural center. So we looked around, and in 2012, we saw that the NEA was offering a grant for placemaking, and we thought this would be a natural. So we reached out to the Whaling Museum, the Custom House, and Canio's, and we said, you guys want to go in on this with us? Let's look at this grant and see what we can do about establishing a cultural district. And that's how it started. I know I'm taking a long time. I'll just tell you what our mission is. Quick, I'll read it to you. Well, let me tell you this. In the beginning, when we approached the village also about this and asked for their involvement, and we said to them that a designated cultural district will serve as an acknowledgement of our village's long and continuing commitment to the arts and create a focal point of interest for arts activity in the community. This central location can serve as a hub with spokes leading to the multitude of artistic endeavors, both commercial and philanthropic, that take place throughout the community. And so that was when we were focused on that area. As soon as word got out that we were doing this, arts organizations and other community organizations started contacting us and saying, we want to be involved. The Whalers Church, Eastville Historical Society, Bay Street Theater, they all came and said, why can't we be involved? So our mission expanded, and now our current mission statement is very short, don't worry about it. It's the Sag Harbor Cultural District recognizes our community's rich and varied cultural heritage. We actively support a diverse range of cultural and artistic resources to further the sense of Sag Harbor as a place where culture matters and creativity thrives. So that's our goal now.
Thank you, Aaron. Tracy Mitchell is the Executive Director of Bay Street Theater. Tracy, for many years, Bay Street Theater has been the cornerstone of arts and culture in Sag Harbor. How has the theater changed in the last 10 years, and how do you see it evolving over the next 10?
So, I actually have been at Bay Street now for 10 years, just slightly longer than that, and I'm here on the shoulders of the founders, and Emma and Steve, who had the foresight to not only come up with the idea of Bay Street Theater and actually create it. And it is, so building on what they had established already, taking it to new heights, and trying to continue doing the professional theater and things that might move on to off-Broadway and Broadway, and helping artists of all kinds who need to find a home to do their work. About 3-4 years ago, we actually went to our board and said, you know, we're getting so many requests to do things in the non-summer season that are really broader than just theater. So at that time, we actually changed the name to be more representative of what we do and the community that we serve. And it's the Bay Street Theater and the Sag Harbor Center for the Arts. So we feel that our doors should be open to anyone, and that sort of encompasses the capability of doing that. And we also serve around 35 other nonprofit organizations that need a place to go to, especially in the off-season, again, to do their work, to do their fundraising, to do whatever it is they might need. So we help in that way as well.
Okay, thank you. Kelly Dodds is the president of the Sag Harbor American Music Festival. The festival this year celebrated its eighth year in September and has already begun looking ahead to its 10th anniversary in 2020. In terms of hosting a village-wide event like this in Sag Harbor, what approaches have worked best and what has been unsuccessful?
Hi. Thank you, Gavin. Thanks, everybody. The most successful approach for us has been to reach out to the community, to literally canvass the community, going business to business, sector to sector, with the schools, with the media outlets, And we actually started, the concept of the music festival immersed in like 2009 is where it began. And then we spent at least a year talking to people and sharing our vision. It began small, like one-on-ones. Brian sitting over there, I had a great conversation with him early on and got some incredible feedback that really helped us take, each person we met with, we take that feedback and move on and incorporate it into the vision. And so we have many businesses that support us now. We are a 501c3, a nonprofit charitable organization, and we don't have a paid staff. We're completely run by volunteers. Our board is a working board. We have some board members here. Thank you, guys. And yes, we have a lot of board members here. So, we've really been fortunate in that, and the community wanted something like this. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been successful. And a challenge for us would be, we don't have our own space, right? So we work within. We try to shine a spotlight on Sag Harbor is a beautiful place. We don't have to, we're not adding anything to it. We're just sort of shining the light on what exists here. And the businesses that partner with us, we pair musicians with those businesses and wherever possible have performances in those locations. And we time it, they're free to the community, free to anyone who comes to Sag Harbor, so that people are walking around the village and getting past Main Street, getting to some of our cultural organizations, and we do work with the Cultural Heritage District. So, so how that can be an issue sometimes, or if we're limited by the weather. The weather, of course, that's the easy one. But if we didn't have that sponsorship support, if we're depending on sponsors for our locations, then we would have fewer locations. So, we've been lucky though through the years. It's been 8 years now. That we've been constantly, consistently growing and expanding to a second level. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Nick Gazzolo he's both president of the Sag Harbor Partnership as well as the treasurer of the Sag Harbor Cinema Art Center. Nick, the board of the Sag Harbor Cinema Art Center has largely been focused on purchasing and rebuilding the cinema space. Can you give us a timeline for the completion, and in terms of programming, what the first 6 months might look like after the opening?
Excellent question. Before I get to it, I just want to thank everyone who's been a part of this campaign and brought us to where we are. You can see the building going up across the street and the facade taking shape, and it's really unbelievable. And it's only because of all the incredible hard work from board members. And so I want to recognize people on the Sag Harbor Partnership Board. Please raise your hand. And people on the Sag Harbor Cinema Art Center Board, raise your hand. And people on the advisory board, it's been nonstop. And especially want to recognize Susan Mead and April and Eric. It's for all the hard work. It's countless. The hours and the dedication, so that's really what's made it all possible. We're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the fire, and now we're seeing the building go back up the way it is. So it's quite amazing. And so to answer your question, when are we going to open? Well, we like to say fall of 2019 because it gives us a little bit of room here, but that's the plan, and we're doing everything we can. We just had a building committee meeting this morning to be open for movies in fall of next year. In terms of the programming, we have a fantastic programming committee. Julia Daniolo Villan is leading it up, and we have other wonderful people like Wendy Keys from Lincoln Center and Susan Lacey, and a great group of folks working on the programming. In terms of what's going to be similar and what's going to be different, the emphasis on wonderful independent films, documentary films, foreign films, which were there with the previous owner, will still be there, and then it'll be expanded in terms of having more for kids, more educational programming, more community outreach, some high quality, family friendly films. So, we want to kind of build on the tradition that's always been there and then expand on it to just have a broader spectrum of entertainment for folks.
All right, thank you, Nick. I'm not sure what title to give April Gornik, so she's involved in a number of things. In addition to the cinema, obviously, and the church project, which we'll be talking about, you've been involved with a lot of different nonprofits in terms of developing programming and fundraising. What are some of the biggest challenges facing institutions steeped in the arts and culture on the East End?
Well, I want to say back at you, Gornik, and everybody at the Express, because I think that it's journals like yours, it's journalism, the way that you present it, that really brings a community together and brings arts and culture to a community. It's very important in every instance of everything I've been involved in. Getting the word out is, of course, the first and foremost rule to follow, because if you don't have people that are talking to each other and you don't know that events are occurring and programs are happening from these great institutions that we have out here, then they're worthless. So thank you for all the support that you guys have given us. And I'm just going to single out Nick for a second, because of the people that you mentioned. I mean, Nick is just, we've all been busting our butts, of course, on with the cinema. But that said, the other thing that I am really excited about is just sitting at this table today, because Tracy's efforts and Eric's efforts and Kelly's, I mean, everything that everybody's been doing in Sag Harbor really feels like it's coming up to a kind of a positive tipping point where you're seeing a community that recognizes each other. So the way that arts and culture are naturally bubbling to the top is going to make it easier, I think, for everybody. And but the main thing that I would hope for all the institutions that I've been involved with is to keep working together and to keep reaching out and make sure that we're not stepping on people's toes, and making sure that we're not overlapping events insofar as it's possible. I have to say, I'm thrilled that we have so many more things that are happening in Sag Harbor in the winter, because it doesn't seem to ever go dead here the way it used to when I first moved down here. And also, what I love about this so much, because, okay, I'm a little more partial to Sag Harbor than the rest of the East End, truth be told, but what I love is that I feel like Sag Harbor now has the opportunity to become kind of the cultural hub. I mean, not to say, I mean, East Hampton's doing amazing things and Southampton's doing amazing things, but I love the way that this community talks to each other, and I think that we have an opportunity to become a real gathering, like a cultural gathering place, as well as what we've always represented. The best ice cream shops, the best coffee shops.
April, can I ask you a question?
Well, sure.
Your wonderful Sag Harbor Partnership email. Do people in Bridgehampton and East Hampton and Amagansett, Montauk, are they getting this information?
Well, there's a lot of people on our mailing list that are from all over the East End, like out to Montauk, Hampton Bays. You know, we love that. And I think, you know, the best thing about the way that everything's going to me is that this would be an example of people doing this in their communities and being able to recognize their own history in a stronger way, and in a way that's fun, so it's brought, like the history of the place is brought into the entertainment of it, in a sense, because I mean, I'm personally like kind of addicted to history now, although I had no interest in it like 20 years ago, so I know that you can really see the light if you're given the amazing narrative of history and the place that you live in the right way. It's like part of the real blood of a place in a wonderful way. Like, you know, it's the DNA. Anyway.
Thank you, April. Our final panelist, Eric Fischl, along with April, they talked a little bit about their concept for the church, which is in the old church on Madison Street, conceptually as an arts incubator rooted in Sag Harbor in the east end of Long Island. This fall, you sent out a survey to learn about what skill sets and talents already exist in the community. What did you learn from that survey, and how has it helped inform your concept of the church?
Well, first of all, thank you for providing me with an opportunity to sit next to my wife.
Just drop the mic.
And the excuse. Yeah, that's great. At this point, the survey is ongoing. It had, I think we've had maybe 200 people respond to it. We did it in Hispanic, or Spanish, as well as English, and tried to reach out into the Hispanic community. We've gotten some responses from that, not nearly as many as the others. But at this point, it's hard to generalize. But some of the things that we found is if you there's a judge in our town who is a vocalist. So if you need a vocalist, we know who to go to. There's a Guatemalan carpenter who builds guitars. So that's good. If you need a blacksmith, one of our law officers is a blacksmith. So there's what we started to see was the town has knowledge. And I think part of the ambition of what we're trying to do is to resource that knowledge, and also to find ways of passing it on so that it stays a knowledge as opposed to a memory of the knowledge. And so we want to sort of dig deeper into the community to really access the skill sets that can become part of something if we develop programs that would seek that kind of collaboration. And so that's part of our ambition at this point. The other thing I want to say, which to me is incredibly exciting right now, is that we have this idea of an incubator as one aspect of the community. The reason being that what I always used to see as a kind of historical parallel, the industry of Sag Harbor, the natural productivity of Sag Harbor, was parallel to the arts. And obviously productivity has left on any large scale, but I began to fantasize that maybe the roads weren't parallel, that maybe they're intersecting at this point in time, and that the next productivity will become the arts. And what that actually means is obviously harder to lay out at this point, but the idea of an incubator being a place where you can take craftsmen, take that kind of skill sets, knowledge of whatever, put them together with creative minds, artists, that maybe there comes out of that something that was unexpected from both ends, that becomes identifiable as something that's a Sag Harbor product. And then can move out again into the world in that way. So, the downside of that is I know nothing about business. So everything that I'm saying is bullshit. But within the context of that, I think there's a nugget of truth to move us all a little bit farther along. But the announcement I wanted to make is that our foundation director, Christy McClear, who's been working closely with us on the church, has just recently had a meeting with Google R&D, their research and development team, who are very excited about partnering with us in a pilot program, providing tech people and creative people in the technologies to work with the creative talents out here. So we're gonna start in 2019, before the church is finished. We have a space across the street at Al McCusick's house and the old house, and there's a studio there that I think we can use for that. So we're going to begin to sort of play around with that kind of pilot program. So that maybe it's actually going to happen.
Wow, thank you, Eric. You just asked those questions as a means of introduction, so we would love to take some questions from the floor. I'm going to turn things over to Brian here, and please raise your hand if you have a question and speak into the microphone so the folks at LTV can pick it up. Thank you.
Hi, folks. Thanks all for coming. Let's. I'm sure all of you have questions for this panel. Anybody want to start? Oh, come on. I see a question up here.
My name is Victor Brownstein, and I'm a Sag Harbor resident. So my question is it Eric, I believe, you mentioned about increase of programs for families and young people. Like we know right now at the library, they have some programs for high school and kids, Bay Street Theater. There are Literature Live, middle school, high school, just went to the performance there. These are great opportunities. So what would you be offering from the cinema to perhaps enhance or round that out?
I can tell you what's been discussed so far in terms of having an anime festival was something April likes to talk about, having virtual reality. I don't think we're going to be looking to have, Avengers 5 there, but, fun. There will be fun studio films, high quality popcorn movies. We're trying to, again, expand the spectrum of that. And we hear from people on a regular basis who say, hey, are there going to be like, regular kind of fun movies there too? So we always take that feedback to heart, and we don't want it to, yes, there's going to be the art house side to it, and that's always been part of it, and we want to build on that, but we also want to have things for everyone in the whole community. And, now figuring out, talking to other film centers about how they do their education program, it takes time, and we have a lot of people on our boards who have done a lot with education. Emma has done a lot with schools, and people who know the schools out here and know the students out here, and that will be part of a dialogue that will take place to figure out what can we bring to those schools, how can we bring those schools to the cinema, and what that's going to look like. So that will evolve over time, but there is a desire from people on the boards and also feedback from the community to say, hey, we want to make sure there's something for everyone here. Oh yeah, April wants me to mention the cartoons for kids on Saturdays. Is it just anime, or is it going to be like Looney Tunes, or what?
I just have this. I have this edict. We have to at least try to have like Saturday after, like Saturday at noon or something, or late morning cartoons for kids, like old movie houses used to. I just want to try it, see if it flies. And so my vision is modern moms and dads would be dropping their kids off, maybe going off to spin class, and instead of going home and baking cookies or whatever. But I don't see why that couldn't work. I'd like to try a lot of, we've been talking about trying a lot of different things, but I think that would be just great, real kind of old-timey fun.
Not just for kids.
Not just for kids.
Thank you. I have a question over here.
I have a question. Hi, I'm Tracy Lorigia. I live in Sag Harbor. I've been in East Hampton since the early 60s.
I worked at Guild Hall, I worked at Bay Street, I was involved with
mic.
Emma and Steve and Sybil back in the day, starting Bay Street. I've also worked with Save the Theaters in New York. We were responsible for landmarking the 35 remaining houses on Broadway. So in that vein, now that you're talking about the young people, how are you incorporating their involvement in what it is that you're doing now? Not just giving them programming, but what their vision would be for this town and keeping them here within all of this culture. Because they're our next people. We've been here for a long time, but we're the kids. And I would like to see maybe a high school involvement in all of your programs. That what do they want? Where do they see their future? How do they see themselves fitting in with what it is that you're doing? I worked with the Brooklyn Academy of Music back when they first started the Next Wave, which was for young people, and that was for 35 and on, or say 27 and up, to get them involved with BAM, and it revitalized that institution at that time because it gave them new people. So that's where are the kids, where are the young people, our high school students?
Great. April, and I think Eric, I'd love to hear Eric's take on this also. April?
Well, first of all, which committee would you like to be on? Baby. I mean, because this is exactly, I love that you're saying this because we talk incessantly about how can we involve children more. We try to go to the key communicators meetings at the high, to take place at the school at Pearson. And we really, I mean, if people have ideas for that, we want them to be involved. We have an advisory board for the cinema, and we have a youth advisory board actually that we've established. We're trying to get them to be a little more active. It's hard without a building being present yet, but we're definitely focused on that, and we definitely want more ideas. And if anybody has any ideas for involving youth, and Eric and I have talked a lot about trying to do programming at the church in some way that will involve kids. And like I said, we're talking to people that work with them, but any advice is appreciated.
Thanks. April, Eric?
Well, one thing that we've discovered, let me go back a second to last year. Every May we have a weekend event called the Cultural Heritage Festival. And last year, the Whaling Museum sponsored a panel of students who, and they were basically asked that exact question, is what is it that you would like to see here in this community that will make it more accessible to you to stay here? What is it that you've done in your high school career that you like? What is it that you didn't like? And unfortunately, the panel was not well attended. It was well attended by the students, and they were very eloquent in what they had to say. So we would like to continue doing that. We have a wonderful resource here in this community. His name is Peter Solo.
Yes,
Peter does more with kids than anyone else I know, and every year the library reaches out to Peter for art exhibits from his students, and the cultural district reaches out to Peter for involvement, and we try to work with the schools as well on our big weekend event to create programs that will tie in with the curriculums that they're learning at that moment in the high school. So those are some of the things that have happened, and we hope to continue to have happen. But it's difficult also because kids these days their plate is full. They, if you ask kids, well, what else do you want to do? Then, it's
the
a
only
different.
thing is, I will say this, is that my daughter grew up here and went to Sag Harbor Elementary, eventually went to Ross, and she and her friends are all in their early 20s. There are many of them who are here, and they want to be here. They don't necessarily want to be in Brooklyn anymore, because it's whatever, the L train doesn't work. But they would love to be able to be a part of what's going on. And I'm not talking about each individual institution. I'm talking about all of you as a group, asking the young people in their 20s and the people who start businesses in their 30s, we're the only demographic in this area where in Sag Harbor specifically, where the age group has gone down. We have younger people moving in here, families who are going and putting their kids in the Pearson because they can't afford to be in the city, they don't want to be there. And
Can I just add something to, you know, April and I started 3 years ago a thing called Sag Harbor in Focus, where we, working with Peter Solo, we asked students to take photographs of Sag Harbor in different sort of photographic genres, journalistic or landscape or historical, et cetera, and but all Sag Harbor based. We feeling that what we need to do is to sensitize people to see where they live, and it was interesting, of course, to want to see it through a youthful eye as well. And so for 3 years we've been doing that with the idea also of selecting winners in each of the categories, and then those photographs would be purchased, or a prize, $100, or would be given to each of the winners. The idea behind that being that there is a profession attached to the vision, that there is a possibility that they could develop further their talent into something that becomes a profession. And I think personally what April and I talk about all the time is, you know, finding ways to get them not only engaged in stuff that's going on, but get them engaged in a way that knowledge is passed, so that they become skilled at what it is. And one of the things we talk about is the virtual reality, which we think will be a sexy thing for them to not only to experience, but to learn how to do. And so that's part of the vision of the church program. But I think if you want to keep kids here, you have to give them a reason to actually be able to live a life here. And even if they ultimately can't afford to stay here, you're giving them a skill set that they can take elsewhere, and also a fond memory of where they got that skill set that will draw them back once they're able to afford it, I guess. So.
Thanks. Eric? I know Nick has to say something, and I want to go to David after that.
Yeah, I just wanted to put in a quick plug for the Sag Harbor Walking Tours app that the partnership developed a few years ago. Since this is about the rise of the cultural district, Eric came to us at that time and he said, hey, would you guys be willing to help us print a map like he has right there? And so we said, oh yeah, sure, we can help you do that, but we also wanted to take it to another level and see if we could develop an app. And I found a small company in New Zealand, and we got it set up, and it started out with just a cultural district map, and then we had the Historical Society tour, and then April went on a bender and created about 14 other tours. But the reason I want to give it a plug here is that the whole idea was people need to understand where they live, what's happened here, the stories of this community. We had this one person, we were talking to a realtor about the app, and we're like, yeah, you should tell people about this. They said, yes, someone just the other day, they just bought a house, and then they asked, what do people do in Sag Harbor? And so I think this idea with the way Sag Harbor is changing and all the development pressure, the idea behind the app was to say, we really want to put as much of Sag Harbor's culture and history in people's hands as possible, because when people really understand where they are and what's happened before them, maybe they'll think about it a little bit differently. in terms of how they want to be in that community. So please go to the App Store, the Google Store, Sag Harbor Walking Tours. It's an unbelievable collection of all of this. And to me, it really, there's culture, there's history, but those things don't happen without community. It takes community to preserve our history. It takes community to promote culture. And so those are sort of the three legs of the stool.
I want to say that app is brilliant. It's wonderful. It's a great invention. Eric, one last question, but I'd like over Dan also.
I just want to add one thing is that to what we were talking about with kids. The library already has something called the Teen Advisory Board. So we actively, all the time, solicit information from the kids about what they would like to see happen in their library. And Eric and Abel mentioned virtual reality. We actually have today at 3 o'clock in the afternoon a virtual reality program for teens and tweens. So,
thanks, Eric. David?
I'd like to hear from the Bay Street Theater what they're already doing for the youth of the whole surrounding area with the programs such as The Great Gatsby, which is on now.
I assume that most people in this room know about the Literature Live program already, but if you don't, it's now, and this is its 10th anniversary year, and I started this when I came on board as just a way of looking at a new way to introduce students to be sure they were seeing live professional theater, and the goal being to try and keep them or introduce them to it if they hadn't seen it, but also to have the discussion around the subject matter. The whole idea that you bring in a new, they may see each other in classes, but it's not the same as actually seeing something and then being allowed to actually discuss it and disagree, not only amongst their own classmates, but other schools. Today, for example, I think we had 6 different schools there. So it's a new way of approaching it. I also found, we always do surveys, and we found that as of last year, this year we have 3,600 students coming, and we will get surveys from them as well. But as of last year, we found that 87% of them had not seen live theater. These are middle school and high school students. So that, to me, was shocking, number one. And even better than that, though, was that about the same percentage of them said they would definitely want to see more theater. So it sort of speaks for itself. And that's just one program that we do. Again, we built on the shoulders of what the foundation that Steve and Emma have laid and have always tried to incorporate that. We do a lot of other programs for students, and people come in and also teach their own programs like stages and that sort of thing. We're definitely open to that. And I should just say that to that, we have hired a director of education and community outreach who is with us today, Alan O'Reilly. If you could just raise your hands if people know who you are. Where is he? Okay. So we are very much committed to this aspect of Bay Street and growing it and working in partnership with everyone at this table.
Kelly, I think you want to add one thing?
Sure. I just wanted to say regarding the music festival, part of our overall mission is to make live music accessible to everyone, and of course that includes the students. You know, as I'm sure you're aware, most young people today, their first interaction with music is here, right, with a device. And so to have them have that experience of being immersed in music, even if it's only for a few days, that's the weekend of the festival itself. But we are working with the local schools to do more with them year-round. We provide a couple other moments throughout the year of free music, but in addition to that, any funds that we raise above like our operating expenses, we donate to the school music programs, and we actively work with them to identify things like that make it more accessible to the whole student body. Like whether it's instruments or this past year they needed uniforms for their concerts, right? Because that sometimes is a barrier to entry for some people. So we're always open to that discussion and welcome feedback.
Thanks, Kelly. Kenny?
Sure, I'm Kenny Mann. Thank you for this fantastic gathering. If you look around the room, we will notice that the majority of us are at least over 40. So my daughter grew up here. She's now 37. I would say we've lost about 70% of that generation. She's in LA. Many of her school colleagues are in Los Angeles or elsewhere because they absolutely cannot survive out here. And I myself, I'm in my 70s. I've lived here 30 years, and it's been a hell of a struggle. So it has. I've cleaned houses. I've done any kind of job that's possible to do here. And I have the glamorous veneer of sometimes making a documentary film that some of you may have seen. But it's because I've been cleaning wealthy people's houses, whatever else I do to make that happen. So I'm very interested in what Eric talked about, which we've sort of glided past. Coming from Africa, I work with sustainable development. That's a term most people think applies only to third world countries, but it's what we're talking about here, is how do we do sustainable development for our youth, which means not just that they're exposed to the arts and the music and the film, but that we train them, we give them professional training and develop our businesses or our local economy to the extent that those young people do have a reason to stay, that they can survive here. And all of this goes along with available housing, etc., etc., etc. So to me, it's not just about exposure, it's taking that further step. I would love to be teaching the documentary film section. And not just helping those kids. When my kid was at the high school, I did a lot of counseling, career counseling for students about what's the next step. Okay, I know how to make a film. Where do I go now? How do I start my career? Can I start it locally, or am I forced to go somewhere else? So I think that this incredible constellation that's happening here should, what's the word, coalesce into something very, very, very much focused on our youth and their future, not just the exposure, but what you said, keeping them here. There are lots of guidelines about sustainable development that we can follow. I mean, the United Nations has 18 laws about sustainable development. And in our village, I bet you we don't stick to half of them. So it's true. It's ranging from human rights to housing to all kinds of things. So it might be interesting to look at that framework as well that already exists. We're all sort of artsy-fartsy people, but there's another way of looking at this, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It exists, and we can use that framework. So that's my suggestion.
Let me just see if I can frame that into a question, and that would be, but it was great. And I've known Kenny probably longer than anybody in this room. We worked together at Guildhall. But you are all professionals. Your jobs are not to teach or train people for careers. Yet you have put yourselves in very influential positions, especially for young people. How do you see your role, or what do you feel that you can do to help facilitate some of the ideas that Kenny brought up? How can you, as professional arts people in this community, help to ensure that young people who have an interest in arts and culture find the right tracks, get into a school, get into a position where they could learn and be, you talked about making arts and culture the next manufacturing job in Sag Harbor. How does that occur, and how do you folks help to facilitate that? Anybody? Okay, cool.
Well, one thing that is so positive about this afternoon is that we're all talking about this. The other thing is that when people say to any one of us, how are you going to solve the affordable housing crisis? We're not going to be able to answer that question.
The town can't answer that question.
I'm sorry?
I said the town can't answer that question.
So, Nick just said, don't even bring it up, parking. How are you going to solve the parking crisis? We obviously face a lot of challenges in this town. I think that anybody who really cares about where they live want other people to care about it too, in a super sustainable way. And that necessarily involve the kids that grow up here and that you want to stay here. But I think that this kind of dialogue is the first step, finding out what people can do with each other to help make these things happen. I'm not a school teacher, but I know school teachers, and I can pretend to be one, sorry. But I think that just to be able to like teach each other about what our talents are, what our options are, what is possible. I actually want to acknowledge Lisa Field and the Sag Harbor Chamber of Commerce for, you know, you being here really means a lot to me personally, because I think the chamber can be involved in all of this, because we're all, I mean, we all love, one of the things we all love about Sag Harbor is Main Street. And we want Main Street to survive and thrive, and it needs to. And if it can't, and if affordable stores can't be here, and if people can't really enjoy what it has long been, and I know it's changed a lot, but it's still pretty damn intact considering, then we won't have the place that we call home. And that's going to involve everybody, like everybody in this room, everybody who cares about this, everybody's ideas have to be heard. And we just have to keep, I think that the way that everything is expanding right now is so positive. The formation of the cultural district, everything, Tracy, that you've done, the American Music Festival, I mean, everybody, but everybody in this room, Nadaberry's work with kids has been like really important over the years. And just like kind of talking, keeping that line of communication open so that we're all talking about things. And when an opportunity arises, pounce on it, do it. Have a Sag Harbor and Brooklyn show. Have theater for teens. Have, you know, just if you keep referring things like that to people, then I think you will have natural growth. But I mean, you can't prescribe it necessarily. And, what?
I think it's about giving them the opportunity to participate.
Right.
And
but we all have to figure out how to make that happen.
And to see their accomplishments, whoever, you know, whether it's the teenagers or the kids who've graduated already. So if it's working with Ed Hollander in planning the planting in the new Marine Park or behind the Whaling Museum, and that they are able to see their accomplishments, that they belong here, that they're not being told what to do or in superfluous programs where it lasts for 10 minutes and then it's done. So.
Can I, may I say something? Yeah. Not so much a question, but I appreciated Kenny's remarks a lot. Yeah. I've watched them over the 35 years. And what came through my mind is maybe what we need is a West Bet of Sag Harbor. Place to live and work.
Laura.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Laura Drenning, and I just love that we're all here together right now as part of the arts community for 21 years now. And you know, one of the solutions that I came up with for my gallery, which is a functional business that sells things, is that I have really emphasized the kind of the atelier model, where you have to live and work together in order to transfer really important information. And if as an arts community we understand that theoretically, there's a lot of opportunity for people in their 20s and their 30s if other community members, if we make it clear that we want this to be a place that's comfortable and attractive for people in their 20s and 30s getting their career going. One of the things that I've done is that I've invited artists from all over the world to come here, and I don't know how or why, but I convinced clients to house them, and in exchange for a painting. And what happens over those dinner tables is magical, because these are people who've worked really hard. The people who have houses here in their 50s and 60s and 40s have worked really hard. This is usually their second house. And they have like this little like pinhole window into an artistic life, and it's the painting on their wall. But to actually climb through that window and get to know these artists and see them going out every day and painting or doing whatever they're doing has created this little sub-community of patrons and artists together, and they vest in each other. And if we can do that in all the different arts in this community, where you know, it might only be 6 weeks in the summer or even in the winter, where you bring somebody into your art studio, you bring somebody into your, you know, your editing studio, and you also, we have a community where we, you know, I think they do this actually in Wellington, Florida, and also in one of the communities in one of the ski resorts. they have like a post board where if you're here to do something in that community, they it's like a swap meet of places to stay. And there's a lot of people here that are lonely as well. So there's older people that have opportunities to have somebody younger stay with them and help out and bring a little life into their homes. There's a lot of empty rooms. There's no housing, but there's a lot of empty rooms. And my daughter, she was a little girl, but she said, Mom, we were driving down the road in November, she's like, we got the solution for the homeless problem. Look at all these empty houses. You know, and I just know that if we have like this little beautiful kind of heartbeat of creativity, and we're all here because we do it every day, but there are people that are watching us that come to our theaters, that come to our galleries, that want a taste of it. And if we make it like culturally, one of the things we do in Sag Harbor is we house artists. And we do it in this way, that it's a barter thing. And I just think it could work. It could work to then create this idea of a place to stay. And of course the housing, the affordable housing, there are communities like Minneapolis that have had very strict laws for the developers that they had to do it. You couldn't just pay them off. Couldn't pay the town off. You had to have the housing, the affordable housing in that development. And here we are 20 years later, 30 years later, and in Minneapolis, people say it's one of the greatest places to live because you can afford the pet sitter and the babysitter, and people are happy because they have a place to live. You know, so I don't know, I think economically there's a way, it's not that far out of sight to create a community of 20 and 30 somethings. I have a tenant in my house that they just moved here from Brooklyn. They've got a young kid in elementary school. I just think we're not far off. We have the resources. Intellectually, I think we have the resources. Physically, the space is here. We just need to find a way to kind of enculturate that patronage.
So, April, how are you going to solve the artist housing problem?
We tap into those people's houses that are vacant 9 to 11 months of the year. We need to contact them. This is something new that
offer them a tax break
and start getting them registered, and then some whole organization on that, on a housing.
Well, we've been talking about doing artisan residencies at the church. You know, small, like not huge, and that's about bringing people from the outside in, so that we can have an exchange. And part of the thinking of that, Eric and I've talked endlessly about this, is that Sag Harbor has always been so internationally connected, even though it's teeny. I mean, we've been going out to the other side of the world since the mid-1800s. Not for the nicest reason, but now we have a good reason to be having that kind of exchange. So, yeah, Laura, it's so great that you said what you said, because wouldn't it be fantastic if people just started helping solve this problem ourselves, instead of waiting for a legislator of some sort to do it, because it is difficult. But actually, I mean, that's great. It's that we could get, maybe the real estate community might be interested in helping this. I mean, Michael Daly is a fantastic community person, and he's a real estate person, and I bet he could help make this happen. So,
sure.
I'm
on it.
Thank you, Michael. And then I should be your first call, Michael, with putting up, because right now we spent $350,000 housing all of our artists. And that's not because we don't try to find places. Again, when you look at development, before the motel, that used to be a place where we took over the hotel, the entire hotel, for our staff and neighbors. And when that got developed, that was the last of it. So this idea and notion of sustainability, you can ask anyone at this table and anyone that runs a business how hard it is to actually get people to work for you, because they can't afford to live out here. They don't want to spend, and even if you get them to drive you know, after the first year, they see what that drive is really like. They're spending an hour and a half to get here or to get back. And with the kind of hours that they work for us, odd hours and late into the night, when shows are over, it's very difficult, so.
We have a question over here.
Hi, I'm Hope Sanjo. In answer to your question, if the news gets out beyond Sag Harbor, I live in Shinnecock Hills. And I'm here because I think you're a model that I'd like to see practiced throughout our town. I also founded the first town art and cultural committee for a lot of the reasons that you're saying here, that there's a void in our town. And my question to each of you is, what can the town do? Because that's one of the reasons I came. And I'd like everyone here to consider attending our meetings, which are now 5 times a year, to voice some of these concerns. And what we do is ask our town board to respond to these ideas and actually practice them. So if each of you could consider now, say something about what the town could do, or if you could kindly email me what your answers are, I'll be happy to forward it to our town council.
You know, as we create a better and better village all the time, we could create a better and better village all the time.
Yes.
We make it more attractive. You have houses that are selling for $2-3 million. You bring the people, 10 million, I was being modest. You bring the people who can afford those houses. We make Sag Harbor a gem. This group makes Sag Harbor a gem. We become a little bit of a perfect place, so therefore the market here becomes so perfect that people can't afford to live here. To start out with, you know, there's no way that you can be realistic. You know, you can't afford to come here and live unless you got
Gazillion, you know this.
yeah, 2 million votes. That's the end of it. We're creating our own. We're creating our own problem. The nicer the place there is, the more people will pay to come.
Excuse me, I'd like to hear the question that was posed answered.
So,
Okay. So the question was about, if we go back to the question earlier.
I'm here to ask you,
What the
what
town-
can the town, how can I help you?
Okay, well-
To forward your concerns to our town council.
let me just start by saying that I'm looking at this from a perspective of a cultural district. And there are a lot of different kinds of cultural districts in existence, one of which they just started doing in Patchogue right now. And the way that was done was the village board in Patchogue. And I have to say right off the bat, this is not going to work here, but I'll just give you this idea. They picked an area that they felt needed some improvement right off their downtown, a place called Terry Street, and they rezoned it as an arts district. And they changed some of the zoning laws in terms of what multi-use could occur in the various buildings, what kind of setbacks the buildings needed, and things like that, to encourage the use of that area by artists. And they wanted artists to be able to live on that street and to work on that street and to sell their works on that street. So it's a great model. The problem is we don't have a blighted area, you know, so it probably wouldn't work here. But I don't have an answer to your question right now. What Southampton could do for Sag Harbor. There's also the problem of jurisdiction. Sag Harbor Village is a completely different jurisdiction. What Southampton does doesn't necessarily reach into our village. But that said, I still think it's worth thinking about how the village could help us and the town. Sorry, how the town could help us, and I'll think about it some more.
Please do.
Any of the others like to field a question about how a municipality might be able to help solve some of these problems? It's a tough one, especially since, as David suggested and Eric just said, you need a bundle of money to get into it. We have no blighted area to rehabilitate and turn into. I remember the idea had been floated many, many years ago with the Bolivar building empty. Wouldn't that be a great place? But another question, Michael.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not a question, but it's an answer. Southampton Town just dedicated over $14 million to Sag Harbor in the last several months with the John Jermain, the park, and then at the cinema. So they've done a lot recently, but you're right in terms of supporting the actual cultural district and cultural development. That's something that really is worthy of thought.
Didn't Fred Thiel just propose that working with Ken Laval, I think they both proposed that a percentage of money from real estate sales would be used for affordable housing solutions?
Yeah, that's coming up.
Yeah, so that's super positive, and that's not Southampton Town.
And also, you now have a smaller percentage of area which is better, in which you can have a second family home within your homes. It's just been passed by the town of Southampton. It's down to a ½ acre if you're on a ½ acre.
Yeah, so Hope, just tell them more of that, please.
No, and also there's the idea of using some of these accessory spaces in your place for studios, for artists to have their own studios. But these are all, I'd really appreciate if any of you here have ideas, you can kindly send them to me. And then I can forward them to our town supervisor, who is very interested in artists having studio space. We've talked to the town about using some of the community preservation land for different uses for artists. April's on the committee, so she knows. So this is an ongoing conversation, and one of my ideas was to replicate what's in the city, which is material for the arts, is to find a space out here where people can leave off materials that they can't use, and then artists from whether they're students or whatever age can come and make use of those materials. But we need a space for that. That's one of the, but I think that would be fun. I love material for the arts in the city. I don't know if you used it. I did a lot, and it would be so fantastic for all your institutions to get materials to build your sets, art materials, instead of it going to the dump.
Could I just say something that's probably tangential, based on your comment about we'll make it paradise, everyone will want to come. It's the curse of the artist. The National Endowment for the Arts back in the 2000 decided that art communities were an economic force to develop a town, and stopped giving money directly to artists and more to towns who identify, like Patchogue or whatever, to develop an arts community. The result of which is that in a lot of communities, the artists get priced out within 2 years. The model keeps accelerating, so they're using artists to do something that is not about art. It's just about economic development. So it kind of makes us as artists feel a little bit like virus. And the thing that I'm interested in personally, and specifically about Sag Harbor, but again, it's pretty abstract, is people tend to come to Sag Harbor looking at it as an authentic historical space, right? And want to live here in the same way. That's an authentic historical space, et cetera, et cetera. But actually have no idea of what authenticity is. And so what they want is an image of authentic lifestyle. And that's part of the problem with an arts community as well, is first of all, people make a mistake by conflating creativity and art. And those are two separate things. Creativity obviously goes into art, but creativity goes into many other things. You can create an atmosphere of creativity that is both exhilarating and it is also something that is deflective and goes into a sort of a more shallow aspect of experience, which is that. So, you know, for me, the thing is when I talk about Sag Harbor as a historically productive town, I'm not talking about a gimmick in it. I'm talking about it as people feeling right about themselves, contributing to something that is not only on a daily basis what they do here, but is of significance to the larger world, right? That's what the history of Sag Harbor has at its core. It's always done that. And is there a way that we can do that now using the arts, which has a channel that will allow production to go out through it to the larger world? If we can come up with the stuff that would be of interest to the larger community, larger economic community, larger international community, larger artistic, intellectual, etc. So the things we're talking about all go into that. But if we can't sort of identify what the quality of the creative spirit actually is, what it's really producing, what it's the things that it's compelling us, challenging us, the youth will see through it right away. That won't be of interest to them. People will come here as tourists. They'll take in the most sort of shallow aspect of what this is about. Sag Harbor won't really be the model we aspire it to be. And the model we're, I think, looking for is a model for our own living. How we want to be in the community, how we want to feel nurtured and fertile and you know, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, you're talking to a maniac. I have no idea. I don't even know why you let me go on.
Did anyone here have a chance to go to the lecture by Zita Cobb that Eric and April arranged? It was just incredible. If you didn't, go to YouTube and look up Zita Cobb, an amazing woman. And one of the things that she did in her small fishing village, and one of the things she said in her lecture was, you know, tourism's great. Hey, we need money, we need jobs, everybody's got to make a living. But if you let your community get to the point where that's the only thing, you're going to lose your soul. And so you have to find another thing. Okay? Fine, the tourism is great, but you need to find another thing. And in my opinion, Sag Harbor has unbelievable riches in terms of culture and history. And when the cinema burned down, it was almost like it was a moment for the village to say, here's this cultural destination that's been on Main Street for 100 years. And we need to ask ourselves, do we want to have that as a cultural destination for the next 100 years? Or are we going to let market forces take it another way where it's a private residence or a high-end store or something? And that's essentially what we asked the community when we started to raise money for the cinema. Fortunately, enough people said, we do want that to be a cultural destination. And now with what Eric and April are doing with the church, it's like we're deciding as a community to reinvest and really double down on being a place of culture and being a place of history. And I think the more we lean into that, the better. Sometimes my partner Renee says, yeah, we're like Marfa by the sea. We really are making a decision as a community that we want to just dial this up as much as we possibly can and be known for it more and more. And because, again, if we don't, that is at risk of sort of getting whittled down, and it'll just be more and more like, any other pretty summertime.
Tracy?
I would just add to that by saying that Sag Harbor is one piece of the East End, and this past year we formed what's called the Hampton's Arts Network, and it's 19 arts organizations, and the executive directors meet once a month to discuss exactly the kind of things that we're talking about right now, to the extent that the East End, there's no reason why the Hamptons should connote anything but what the Berkshires connotes when you say that. We should be seen as the arts, the hub of arts, just outside of New York. There's no reason not to. We have more art per capita, I think, than, just about, if you looked at it on a per person basis, we have more art and more really good art. So I think the kinds of things that we're discussing today are being looked at across the entire East End and can only help us as a village as well.
How have you dreamed of working together among organizations? How did, lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, going, oh my God, I wish that so-and-so would do this. How have you imagined working together or working with another organization?
Nude.
Drop the mic.
We're in.
Well, call me shallow.
I mean, I could just imagine that Bay Street is doing some new work. And we talked to the cinema, and they have films on the same subject and artists who are working on those kinds of topics, and that come and play beforehand, and then afterwards we come back around and circle on to the historic aspect of what we were just talking about. I mean, there are so many ways of working together.
Eric?
Can I just say that that's what we talk about every month at our cultural district meetings, is how our organizations can work together and how we can find themes that resonate for the community and for all of our organizations, and also how we can avoid conflicting with each other so we don't try to schedule important events at the same time. So all of these things are important. And I just want to echo, while I have the mic, what people have been saying on this panel about the importance of art in this community. Not just art, but culture in this community. This culture is bigger than art. Our history is part of our culture, and that's reflected in the fact that we have 2 historical organizations and a historical museum in the cultural district. And our churches and our synagogues are part of our culture, and they're involved in the cultural district, and they're actively contributing to that. And I think that we all look around at our community at Sag Harbor, and we see that there are big changes that have happened, and the changes continue to happen at a faster and faster pace. But the one thing that isn't changing is our commitment to the arts and our commitment to our history and our culture. And I think that is Sag Harbor's golden goose. And we ignore the arts at our peril. So we ignore our culture at our peril.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to thank you, Eric. I think an important partner, we're talking a lot about community and what that means to all of us in this room, and there's a lot of things that we can agree about, but I think, is there anyone from the village board here today? I think that's an important partner that's missing from this discussion, and we see that in the village board meetings, and I'm not saying it to be, argumentative, but I would like to see them as a partner. I think they do, of course, support many artistic endeavors in this community. But I would like them to be a discussion about what our community is, because certainly the people who are on that board are shaping the community by the choices that they make. And not everyone who is supportive of the arts lives in Sag Harbor Village and is a voting member or can, contribute to that discussion. So I think that's an important thing that we can work on for all of us.
I would just add that Kelly, before the lunch, when she walked in, she said, well, the chamber and the partnership should talk about how they can work together. So we live in a time of such bitter partisanship on a national level and even on a local level, and I think it's so important to look for the intersections where people can find ways to work together and not just think, oh, well, this person's in the business lane and this person's in the art lane and this person's, and just look for the opportunities to work together. And we really try to emphasize with the cinema how much it is about Main Street, bringing people to Main Street. In the era of streaming movies and online shopping, we want to keep people coming to Main Street all year long. Bay Street is a perfect example of that. People go to dinner before they go to a show. People go to a bar after they go to a movie. And so the way that the arts and the business of Main Street feed each other can't be overstated, and we just need to look for every opportunity to sort of dialogue and synergize around that.
Thanks, April.
One thing that Tracy, the cinema people and Tracy and Scott talked about when we very first met, and to sort of explain that we were going to be a cinema arts center and not a cinema art, not an arts center per se, because you have that, was that in the idea of doing these kinds of joint ventures where there would be a theatrical presentation and we could show films from the same era or by the same auteur or something like that, and the Sag Harbor Historical Society, whatever. We'd also talked about the possibility of having weekends that would be like destination weekends for people coming out from the city, and we all know that Main Street struggles more in the winter, and we were thinking that would be an incredibly positive thing to have these events that would be kind of village-wide and present all sorts of different opportunities for being out here and enjoying what the culture, arts and culture presence represents. So again, that's just as an example of what you're saying.
Thanks. Em has a question, and Paul has a question.
The issue of what can the board do to immediately change things. One of the things they could do is the village board. They could make it possible for the auxiliary buildings to be used as residences or short-term rentals. And we have a lot of empty buildings behind our houses, and we have garages and places that can all be converted into summertime housing or apartments that could be less expensive than renting a house out there would be, and could bring an awful lot of younger people in, especially if they were longer term as apartments. I mean, there's a lot of space available that could immediately be available by just a change in zoning. That's very simple and quick.
It used to be the case where you would have, many houses would have extra accessory buildings turned into apartments, guest houses, and I think Emma has a question.
Actually, thanks, Brian. Not so much a question. I just, looking at the time, I wanted not to let people start leaving before someone said thank you to the panelists, because you guys all started out by thanking the room for the support for these amazing creative endeavors. But, Steve and I came out here permanently 27 years ago when we started Bay Street, and Sag Harbor was a very, very different town back then. It really was dead in the winter and the off season. There was no music festival. There was no Sag Harbor partnership. The cinema didn't have educational outreach programs. You could barely stay in the building long enough to sit through a film, because of the must and so forth. So a tremendous amount has changed here in Sag Harbor in recent years, and a huge piece of that is thanks to the people who have stepped up to commit to a life here and to commit to making that kind of difference for all of us who live here. And every single person at this table has done and is doing that to some degree. I mean, God bless Tracy for picking up the reins of Bay Street Theater, you know, and carrying it forward. And it's 10 years since Steve and I left, and Bay Street is still going strong and growing, and that's very much thanks to Tracy and Scott. And God bless Eric for you know, shepherding, and Nick on the library board for shepherding the library through its new incarnation and its new space and so forth. And thank you to Kelly for starting the music festival. And most of all, I can't even begin to say how much gratitude we owe to April Gornik and Eric Fischl, for whom, you know, they don't need to be doing this. They have very lovely, beautiful careers as amazing artists. But they have devoted themselves to this village in a way that we haven't seen possibly since Mrs. Russell Sage. And what they've brought to Sag Harbor and what they're continuing to bring to Sag Harbor, not just through the cinema, but through the church and Hal McCusick's house. I just did an interview yesterday with an artist who was in residence in Hal McCusick's house, thanks to Eric and April, doing a project on the creative process. You know, probably not many people here even knew that artist was here doing that research, and it's thanks to April and Eric. I mean, she's a young person who is just starting out, and they're already doing this work, and they're already the ones who are asking the hard questions, and who are not only asking the questions, but using their own resources, their own time, their own art, their own financial resources to bring the answers to this community, and I think we owe them an enormous debt of gratitude.
All right, as usual with these things, we could really go on forever, but it is time to wrap things up. We will have some coverage in the newspaper next week about this talk, and if there's anything you'd like to add, you can certainly reach out to us and you know, let us know what you're thinking. So thank you again to our panel. You guys really are amazing. Thank you to the American Hotel for a great lunch. We really appreciate everything. Thank you.